Most people like to believe that every choice they make is the result of a conscious, rational decision. But the reality is that we are often just passengers to psychological patterns and biological drives that have been hardwired into us over millennia. We go through life convinced of our own objectivity while simultaneously wondering why we keep misjudging the intentions of others, or why we find ourselves trapped in the same draining social cycles. This disconnect happens because we treat human nature as a mystery rather than a predictable set of rules, leaving us vulnerable to toxic people and at the mercy of our own sudden, confusing emotional spikes. Robert Greene suggests that the only way to break this cycle is to stop being a reactive participant in the social world and start becoming a master strategist of behavior. Instead of getting hurt by someone's hidden agenda or losing your temper when things go wrong, you can learn to step back and observe the underlying mechanics of why people act the way they do. By stripping away the masks that people wear in public and recognizing the primitive impulses that drive them, you gain a massive advantage. You transform from someone who is easily manipulated by social games into a calm, detached leader who can navigate even the most complex human interactions with total clarity. The ultimate goal of understanding these laws is to give you a level of self-mastery that most people never achieve. When you understand the roots of envy, narcissism, and aggression, those traits no longer have the power to surprise or upset you. You begin to see the world as it actually is rather than how you wish it to be, allowing you to master your own impulses before they master you. By the time we finish breaking down these core principles, you will be equipped to see through the surface-level behavior of those around you and take full control of your own psychological destiny. The foundational myth of the modern human experience is the belief that we are rational creatures. We move through our days convinced that our decisions, from the careers we choose to the people we love and the products we buy, are the result of a logical, step-by-step processing of facts. However, Robert Greene's law of irrationality strips this illusion away, revealing a much more uncomfortable truth. We are profoundly irrational beings governed by ancient biological drives and deeply embedded psychological patterns. Our brains are not sophisticated computers designed for objective truth. They are survival machines shaped by millions of years of evolution, where split-second emotional reactions often meant the difference between life and death. In the modern world, these same survival mechanisms often lead us into toxic relationships, financial ruin, and social catastrophe because we mistake our internal smoke, our fleeting emotions, for the flame of reality. To master your emotional self, you must first accept that rationality is not a birthright or a fixed personality trait. It is a hard-won skill, a discipline that must be practiced with the same rigor as an athlete training for a marathon. Most of us live in a state of continuous emotional reactivity, responding to every perceived slight, every bit of bad news, and every momentary desire as if it were an absolute truth. When someone insults us, we feel a surge of anger and immediately label them an enemy. When we see a get-rich-quick opportunity, we feel a surge of excitement and convince ourselves it's a sound investment. In both cases, the emotion comes first, and the reasoning follows only to justify what we already feel. This is the essence of irrationality, the mind acting as a lawyer for the heart's impulses rather than a judge of the facts. A critical step in this journey is the recognition of our inherent biases, the most dangerous of which is confirmation bias. This is the mental filter that causes us to notice and remember information that supports our existing beliefs, while completely ignoring or devaluing anything that contradicts them. If you believe a coworker is lazy, your brain will highlight every time they take a long lunch break, but remain blind to the hours they spend working late. This bias creates a closed loop where we are never challenged and never grow, essentially trapping us in a hall of mirrors where we only see reflections of our own ego. To combat this, a master strategist must learn to actively seek out the counter-evidence and invite perspectives that make them uncomfortable. True rationality begins the moment you become skeptical of your own gut feelings and start asking why you feel a certain way rather than blindly following the impulse. Greene's metaphor of looking at the flame, not the smoke, provides a powerful framework for navigating the chaos of human interaction. The smoke represents the immediate visible signs of human behavior, the sudden outbursts of anger, the grand promises, the shifting moods, and the dramatic gestures that demand our attention. Most people spend their entire lives reacting to the smoke, getting lost in the haze of other people's dramas and their own temporary feelings. However, the flame is the underlying character, the long-term trends, and the core motivations that drive a person's behavior over years, not minutes. To see the flame, you must develop a sense of detachment. You must learn to observe people, including yourself, as if you were a scientist studying a specimen. Instead of asking, why is this person being mean to me right now, you ask, what is the pattern of this person's behavior over the last 6 months? By shifting your focus to these long-term trends, the immediate emotional sting of an interaction vanishes, replaced by a calm, strategic understanding of the situation. This process of emotional mastery also requires an honest audit of our internal triggers. We all have psychological wounds or insecurities that, when touched, cause us to lose our balance. For some, it is the fear of being excluded. For others, it is the need to always be right or the craving for constant validation. When these triggers are pulled, our animal self takes over and we lose the ability to think strategically. Mastering the law of irrationality means identifying these triggers before they are pulled. It means recognizing the physical sensations of an emotional hijack, the racing heart, the tight chest, the sudden urge to speak, and deliberately choosing to pause. In that pause lies your freedom. By creating space between the stimulus and your response, you move from being a reactive victim of your biology to becoming a leader of your own mind. Ultimately, the goal is to reach a state of high-level Churchillian perspective, where you can see the entire battlefield of your life without getting bogged down in the individual skirmishes. This doesn't mean becoming a cold, emotionless robot. Rather, it means using your emotions as data points instead of directives. You acknowledge the feeling, you understand its origin, but you do not let it hold the steering wheel. As you practice this, you will notice a profound shift in your social dynamics. You will find that people can no longer push your buttons because you have dismantled the machinery behind them. You become a source of stability in a world of chaos, a person who can see through the masks of others because you have finally had the courage to look behind your own. This is the true power of the master strategist, the ability to remain rational when everyone else is losing their heads. The world is a stage, and every person you interact with is, to some extent, a trained actor. From the moment we leave our homes, we put on a persona, a social mask designed to hide our insecurities, project confidence, and adhere to what society expects of us. We do this to protect ourselves and to gain status. However, Robert Greene's law of role-playing teaches us that while people can control their words with great precision, they are almost never in full control of their bodies. To become a master strategist, you must stop listening to what people say and start observing what they leak. Their true character isn't found in their carefully rehearsed speeches. It is found in the micro-expressions, those split-second flashes of genuine emotion, and the subtle shifts in their tone of voice that occur when they are caught off guard. The key to seeing through these masks is to develop a hyper-awareness of nonverbal cues. When someone is congratulating you on a success, their words might be, "I'm so happy for you," but a slight narrowing of the eyes or a tightening of the lips reveals a flash of envy. When a leader claims to be confident, a frantic tapping of a pen or a slight crack in their vocal pitch tells the real story of their anxiety. These leaks happen because the human brain is under constant pressure to maintain the mask, and eventually, the animal self breaks through the cracks. By paying attention to these physical contradictions, you gain a superpower of social intuition, allowing you to see the fear behind the aggression or the arrogance behind the insecurity. Beyond body language, the most reliable way to judge a person's true character is to observe them during times of adversity. It is incredibly easy for someone to be kind, generous, and composed when everything is going their way and the sun is shining. That is simply a fair-weather mask. Real character, the core flame of a person, is only revealed under pressure. How do they treat a waiter when their food is late? How do they react when they lose money or face a public embarrassment? Do they take responsibility or do they immediately look for a scapegoat? When the mask of comfort is stripped away by stress, the person's true nature is laid bare. A master strategist knows that a person who crumbles or turns toxic during a small crisis will almost certainly betray you during a large one. Mastering this law requires you to become a method actor yourself. To truly observe others, you must learn to lower your own ego and become a mirror. If you are too busy projecting your own mask or talking about yourself, you will miss the subtle cues others are giving off. By adopting a posture of calm, non-judgmental observation, you encourage others to relax, which often causes their masks to slip even further. You aren't looking to catch people in a lie for the sake of conflict. You are gathering data to understand the reality of who they are. Once you see the person behind the persona, you can no longer be manipulated by their performances, and you can navigate your relationships with a level of control and social X-ray vision that most people don't even know exists. The most common mistake we make in our relationships is believing that people will change simply because they have the potential to do so or because they have promised us they will. Robert Greene's law of compulsive behavior argues that a person's character is not a collection of random choices, but a deeply engraved set of patterns formed in childhood and reinforced by decades of habit. These patterns act like a powerful gravitational pull, drawing the individual back into the same types of mistakes, the same toxic relationships, and the same self-sabotaging behaviors over and over again. When someone tells you they made a mistake and it will never happen again, they are often sincere in that moment, but they are ignoring the massive weight of their own history. To determine the strength of someone's character, you must adopt a long-term perspective. Character is not what a person does once in a moment of extreme inspiration or extreme stress. Character is what they do repeatedly. If someone has a history of burning bridges in every job they've ever had, they will likely burn the bridge they have with you, regardless of how much they seem to like you now. If they have a pattern of being unfaithful or dishonest in past relationships, that behavior is a part of their compulsive makeup. This is why a master strategist watches the track record, not the highlight reel. By observing these recurring loops, you can predict a person's future behavior with startling accuracy. The most dangerous aspect of weak character is that it is infectious. When you associate closely with people who are chronically disorganized, perpetually angry, or constantly playing the victim, their negative psychological patterns begin to seep into your own life. You start to adopt their defensive language, you mirror their low energy, and you find yourself dragged into their unnecessary dramas. This isn't just a social problem, it's a strategic one. Choosing your inner circle is the most important decision you will ever make because you are essentially choosing which destiny you want to be influenced by. A person of strong character, someone who is resilient, accountable, and consistent, will pull you upward, while someone of weak character will act as an anchor. Ultimately, accepting the law of compulsive behavior saves you from the exhaustion of trying to fix people who do not want to be fixed. It allows you to see character as destiny without bitterness or judgment. You realize that you cannot change the fundamental blueprint of another person, but you have total control over who you allow into your professional and personal life. By prioritizing people who demonstrate a pattern of integrity and self-discipline, you surround yourself with a fortress of stability. You stop gambling on people's potential and start investing in their proven reality, ensuring that your own journey toward mastery isn't derailed by the repetitive chaos of others. The human brain is fundamentally wired for the hunt, not the feast. We are evolutionary descendants of creatures who had to constantly seek out scarce resources, and that biological programming has translated into a modern psychological reality. We place the highest value on that which is difficult to obtain. Robert Greene's law of covetousness explains that the moment something or someone becomes too familiar, too available, or too eager to please, our interest begins to evaporate. This is the paradox of human desire. We think we want security and constant presence, but what actually keeps our imagination captured is a sense of mystery and the slight threat of loss. When you are always there to answer every text, agree with every opinion, and satisfy every demand, you become a known quantity, and the human mind naturally begins to look elsewhere for excitement. To become an elusive object of desire, you must master the art of strategic withdrawal. Most people operate from a place of insecurity, believing that if they aren't constantly visible, they will be forgotten. However, the opposite is true. In a world of constant digital noise and oversharing, absence is a powerful tool. When you create a slight distance or a sense of independence, you force others to fill that void with their own imagination. They start to wonder what you are doing, who you are with, and why you don't seem to need them. This internal dialogue in their mind actually increases your presence in their life more than your physical presence ever could. You are shifting from a passive object that is always available to a prize that must be pursued. The key insight here is the balance between presence and absence. If you are always absent, you are forgotten. If you are always present, you are devalued. The master strategist knows how to give enough of themselves to create an initial hook of interest, and then pull back just as the other person is getting comfortable. This creates a psychological tension that the other person feels a desperate need to resolve. By maintaining your own interests, your own schedule, and a life that is clearly not centered entirely around someone else, you project a high-value status. People naturally assume that if you are independent and slightly elusive, it must be because you have other high-quality options or meaningful work, which instantly makes you more attractive in any social or professional setting. Finally, this law requires you to resist the urge to overshare. In the age of social media, the instinct is to put every thought and every meal on display, effectively killing any sense of mystery. To remain covetable, you must keep a part of yourself hidden. Do not reveal all your cards at once. Let people discover your talents and your depth slowly over time. When you are not an open book, people are forced to keep reading to find out what happens next. By refusing to be completely captured or owned by any group or individual, you maintain an aura of power. You become the person who is invited to every event not because you are helpful, but because your presence feels like a rare and significant validation. The law of repression centers on the concept of the shadow, a term famously coined by the psychologist Carl Jung and expanded upon by Robert Greene. We all like to think of ourselves as kind, rational, and composed individuals, but beneath that polished surface lies a reservoir of darker traits: envy, aggression, selfishness, and a thirst for power. From a young age, we're taught to suppress these feelings because they don't fit the image of a good person. We push them deep into our subconscious, building a mental wall between our public persona and our private impulses. However, this repression is a dangerous game. The more you ignore your shadow, the more power it gains, often leaking out in the form of passive-aggressive behavior, sudden emotional outbursts, or self-sabotage that you can't quite explain. The key insight here is that you cannot destroy your shadow, you can only integrate it. When you try to kill off your darker side, you also kill off the energy, ambition, and raw survival instincts that come with it. A person who is too nice or completely repressed often lacks the teeth needed to succeed in a competitive world. They become pushovers who are eventually resentful. A master strategist, however, understands that these darker traits are actually high-octane fuel. By acknowledging your aggression, you can channel it into a relentless work ethic or the courage to stand up for yourself. By acknowledging your vanity, you can use it to craft a more compelling and professional public image. To confront your dark side, you must first stop lying to yourself. You have to look in the mirror and admit when you feel a flash of jealousy toward a friend or a desire for revenge against a rival. This honesty isn't about becoming a bad person, it's about becoming a whole person. When you are aware of your shadow, you are no longer its slave. You can watch the impulse arise and consciously decide how to use that energy rather than being blindsided by it. This self-awareness gives you a grounded sense of authentic confidence. You don't need to overcompensate with fake bravado because you know exactly what you are capable of, both good and bad. Ultimately, the goal is to become formidable. People can sense when someone has integrated their shadow. There is an aura of quiet strength and hidden depth about them. They aren't easily intimidated because they have already faced their own internal demons. They aren't easily manipulated because they recognize the shadow in others instantly. By embracing the full spectrum of your human nature, the light and the dark, you stop wasting energy on internal conflict and start directing that power toward your goals. You transform from a fragile, one-dimensional character into a complex leader who can navigate the harshest realities of life with total composure. Understanding human nature is not a journey into cynicism or a guide on how to become a cold, manipulative machine. On the contrary, it is the ultimate form of realism. Most of our daily suffering, the arguments that drain us, the betrayals that blindside us, and the self-doubt that keeps us awake at night, stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of how people actually work. When you stop expecting people to be perfectly logical or selfless, and start seeing them as they truly are, you gain a social intelligence that acts as a compass in a chaotic world. You begin to see the hidden motives and deep-seated fears that drive human behavior, allowing you to navigate professional hierarchies and personal relationships with a level of grace and precision that most people will never possess. The true transformation happens when you realize that other people's behavior is rarely a reflection of your worth, but rather a reflection of their own internal struggles and biological programming. When someone is aggressive, envious, or dismissive toward you, you no longer take it personally or react with defensive anger. Instead, you observe it as a natural phenomenon like a storm passing through. This shift in perspective makes you more empathetic and patient because you understand the why behind the what. Paradoxically, by becoming more detached and observant, you become significantly more powerful. You are no longer a puppet whose strings are pulled by the moods and whims of others. You are the one holding the strings of your own psychological destiny. If you are ready to stop being a victim of social games and start mastering your mindset, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. We are committed to providing deep dives into psychology that help you decode the complex world around you and build a life of total self-reliance. To truly master all 18 laws and gain the full social X-ray vision described by Robert Greene, you need to engage with the full text. It is a dense, life-changing manual that serves as a blueprint for the rest of your life. You can grab your copy of the Laws of Human Nature through the link in the description below to begin your journey toward becoming a master strategist today.